Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. Bugsy Malone is in bed. It's 8:30 Saturday night. Sorry I haven't had any content out the last few days, guys. Shenanigans have been right back at their peak and disruptive. And I'm so over it. It's tiring and just winding me up. I think I've even got something going on with my left eye as well, like a conjunctivitis maybe or something. I don't know what's going on, but anyway, Chelsea tomorrow, and I thought I needed to get something out if I can. I don't even know, if you're watching this, then it obviously made it up, but we'll find out. Hope you're all happy and healthy doing the things you love. I did want to get my thoughts out on the Bournemouth game because, after tomorrow, it's probably going to be forgotten as either a stepping stone towards an amplified resentment of Ange, and if we turn it around and beat Chelsea, then Thursday would be forgotten by some, and I don't think it should be. I think there's meaningful tales and lessons to learn, and also important takeaways from it, right? And so I'm going to try my best to give my take on it. And look, as always, I try my best to kind of see things from both angles and land where I do. But listen, as I always say as well, every opinion at Tottenham is valid. And when I saw what I saw after the final whistle on Thursday night, I was immediately shocked. And I was immediately like, well, what are you trying to gain out of that, right? You're attacking a man for his nationality, his body weight, his age, whatever. It was sort of brutal, personal, ad hominem attack that was born out of frustration of the performance for sure. But I would also argue that I think a lot of the frustration is a boiling up of, bearing in mind that these guys who went to that game, the stadium's only got 12,000 seats. So if you're part of the lucky few that got an allocation, then you are going to have more loyalty points than 99.99% of Tottenham fans in the in the membership or season ticket establishment. Some Tottenham fans see Tottenham as a hobby, a bit part consideration, a thing that they kind of will drift in and out of. Others feel like it's a big deal. To us, we spend a lot of time dedicated towards our thoughts on it, and these guys who have enough points saved up to get to Bournemouth, they probably eat, breathe and sleep Tottenham all day every day. It's a massive part not only of their thought process but their schedule. They probably have to go to Europe. They have to they go to every game probably in order to maintain that amount of points. And so it's such a big part of their life that when you put in a performance like that, you can understand why you want to vent. Totally. And I'm not in any way, shape or form saying that I don't understand the need to vent. I do challenge the benefit of doing it. What do you gain from, giving Ange a dressing down like that rather than keeping it on the matter? But what I'd also say is I think we need to remember that whilst Ange is not, first of all, he's not infallible. And second of all, he is not in any way, shape or form, in my mind, absolvable of any responsibility for what is happening on the pitch right now. I think there's a lot of considerations regarding what's happening in this season and last season and what he had to inherit and the falling knife post Conte. I said that the next guy's not going to be the guy after the next guy is going to be more likely the guy. And that was before I even knew it was Ange, right? So it wasn't an Ange thing. It was just a general feeling that there was too much going to happen with regards to changing at Tottenham and in the wider Premier League hemisphere for it to be anything other than a stepping stone process for that guy. And I'm not ready to see the next step yet. I'm really not. For many reasons. If you're going to ask for someone to leave your business, in any walk of life, you need to have 3 or 4 things covered, right? Number one, you need to have a full understanding of what their job and roles and responsibilities are so that you can fully appreciate whether they're doing their job well enough for you. Number 2, you have to be able to compare and contrast their performance to their peers, i.e. who does similar things. So in the case of Ange, other managers in the Premier League, so that you can figure out, is this guy struggling because of his talents? Is he struggling because of the squad? How would he do in a different team? How would a different manager do in this team? And then figure out where you think, as best you can, as impartially as you can, where you think the kind of the safe middle ground is in terms of where does he fit in the stack rank, so that you can compare and contrast it to other people so you know what you're dealing with. And the third is, most importantly, if you want him gone, but you also acknowledge that the role itself is needed to be done by somebody, then you should probably have an idea of who it is that you want to come in, because otherwise you could be scrambling and end up like we did in that Nuno situation. And to me, I look at the managerial market right now and I'm not that impressed. I don't know where you go from here right now if everyone had their way and sacked Ange. Between now and the end of the season, there'll likely be lots of sackings across Europe and you might have a better opportunity if that was to happen. The only way I would really be on board somehow sort of sacking Ange, like everyone seems to want, is if it becomes apparent that he's lost the dressing room. And I don't think that's apparent yet, but there's certainly question marks around the effort and the interest on the part of the players. And I do have an issue with the fact that it sort of doubles down on the lack of need to, acknowledge the problems of the matches in isolation in pursuit of a message that he's still trying to deliver. To me, if you haven't delivered your message after 15 months, there's something wrong with the message. Either the people aren't capable of delivering the message that you want to deliver, or the message is too complicated, or you're asking too much of the players given their relative age and experience and their ability to adapt. I've said it before, my interpretation of Ange ball, not only is it physically intensive and he's asking a lot of the players to run and move, and it's a different style of press, a different style of front foot football than what you see with, say, Pep, that largely lets the ball do the movement for the most part. But on top of that, there's also this kind of abdication of specific instruction in the tactics, in the message, certainly in the during game communications. It's kind of like here's the framework, you figure it out. And when it works, it's brilliant. When it doesn't, there's too many balls being given away, too many opportunities being handed over in transition, and if the chemistry and the wavelength aren't there with the players on the day, then it doesn't work, right? And so, there's certainly things and accountability to Ange that I think that needs to be addressed. But when it comes to the reaction and the anti-Ange agenda that has just suddenly exploded, I think for the most part, not everybody, some people are measured and know that, there's a difference between Levy out and Ange out. They're two different things. They're responsible for different ends of the business or the club's output. And as you know how I feel about the Levy stuff, I think that is understandable if you're looking for a boogeyman, if you're looking for a common denominator. I don't think you should be. I think that football is too complex for common denominators to be the root cause. I think that that's just an easy answer. And again, an easy answer is when I ask people well, if not Levy, then who do you want? Tell me what you want. If not him, what do you expect from the next owner? And the easy answer that I hear all the time that is kind of a nothing burger. It's meaningless. It doesn't mean anything because it's intangible and open to anybody's interpretation, both after the fact and before the fact. I want to see more passion, right? More football being a priority. I don't know what that looks like in terms of decision making from owners, but we'll park the owner conversation. We'll deal with that because that's 100%. You can hear that drum is banging. Levy out. So we'll no doubt be dealing with that conversation again in the coming days. But the Ange out thing, just to round it off with regards the anger, the frustration, the boiling up of anger. I think for the most part, it is a representation of an attack on a guy for how you feel about Tottenham that is in no small part influenced by 25 years of perceived failure or lack of actual success, quote unquote, lifting trophies that he wasn't responsible for. Ange was not here before, June 2023. So anything that happened at the football club that's annoyed you and pissed you off before then, he is not responsible for that. He's also not responsible for all of the things that have happened during his time that were outside of his control. The lack of ability of the Premier League owners to have any teeth with regards stopping Chelsea finding loopholes in the laws and actually creating watertight laws. Right, it's not that difficult. You just got to have a brain on you where you can think about all of the potential wiggle room here and stop it before you publish the rules in the first place. And that didn't happen. Then the lack of ability to enforce them, that didn't happen. The lack of expedition of the Manchester City thing has taken so long, it's ridiculous and still hasn't happened yet. And so the lack of any kind of oversight with regards to that, and for what it's worth, Chelsea and City are the two clubs, and in the case of Abramovich, he is the kind of the one guy that I would argue is more responsible than anything else for the shift towards a very segregated and isolated group of clubs that get most of the success. 90% of the success that is available goes to 5 teams, right? So, I think that generally speaking, the frustrations that the fan base have at Tottenham's fruitless generation, it's not Ange's fault. It's not Ange's fault. He doesn't deserve to be on the receiving end of nasty personal attacks about his nationality, his age, his race, his weight, etc. Because you hate Daniel Levy's decisions, or because you think Donna Cullen is terrible, or that Conte threw the club under the bus and sort of took the wind out of the kind of sails of, or that Ryan Mason's been caretaker manager 3 times, that Tottenham moved the stadium and it hasn't afforded us £100 million play. Ange isn't responsible for any of that, and yet on Thursday he was on the brunt end, the brute force attack from people who I believe feel as strongly as they do, more because they're frustrated with Tottenham than they are with him. That said, Ange is making it very easy on people to point the finger at him because he has a level of conviction and self-belief in his method that seems to defy logic at times. And I mean this with all sincerity when I say this. If everyone else that you're playing against allocates time in their schedule to identify the strengths and weaknesses and the opportunities and threats, the SWOT analysis of a game that's coming up that includes Tottenham Hotspur, and we don't do it, then you are giving up unnecessary margins of error. You're giving up the inches that dictate success and failure when the margins are so tight, the razor thin margins where a decision going against you that shouldn't have done can influence your ability to get the 3 points, which influence your ability to qualify for Europe, which influence your revenue, which influence your acquisitions. Those differences are so small, and yet they add up very quickly. And if you're sacrificing the potential opportunity to take advantage of obvious weaknesses in an opposition setup because you don't have time in your schedule, or because you don't see the value in analysis, in contrast to the opportunity cost of giving up time, drilling the same thing over and over again because the message hasn't sunk in yet after 15 months. As I said, if you haven't got your message across after 15 months, there is something wrong with the message. Either the players do not buy it, or they don't understand it, or the message isn't clear enough or strong enough, or it just doesn't work. But the message can change. It doesn't have to be 100% your way or the highway, stubborn to a hill, die on the hill of the philosophical approach. Because there's no other manager in world football that doesn't at least interpret the value of opposition analysis as meaningful. And there's also no other manager in world football that wouldn't like to play attractive, front foot, philosophically aggressive and lovely on the eye football if it yielded success. But most of them realise that they don't have the squad that can do that and also be successful. Nobody wants to play boring, pragmatic, defensive football, but sometimes the manager needs to do it because it's the only way for them to beat what's in front of them and to get the points, to keep them in a job, to keep him gainfully employed, and to hopefully yield success. Now, success, generally speaking, has only gone in 5 directions of the hundreds of directions it could have gone over the last 25 years. It does only go in a very, very few particular directions, but every single manager doesn't start out with the intention of being boring and defensive. But those that go that way because they know it's in their best interests. And there's a reason why nobody else doesn't do that doesn't do the Ange ball thing all the time. And I know some of you are going to say he does tweak, he does adapt, there's been pivots here and pivots there. I hear you. In isolation, there's been moments of little tweaks, right? It's more of like an adjustment here, an adjustment there. But sometimes you need to have an ace up your sleeve, which has so much value if employed just once. A cast iron different approach to football demonstrated just once by Tottenham and Ange would forever rewrite the abilities of opposition managers who do SWOT analysis, who do look at Tottenham and currently have the ability to say there's no need to spend our time preparing for Tottenham in any other consideration other than this is how they play. So we got to drill the best outcome of popping the ball over the top into the corners because the fullbacks will invert, or popping the ball over the top, or, press the midfield heavy because if you press them well, they'll misplace the pass. That's the transition. That's the opportunity. That's the catalyst for success in the game. And if you just change it once meaningfully, a completely different version of Ange ball, then from then on, not only in that particular next game will that manager and that team that you're playing against be likely to be caught out by the unpreparedness of what's being offered in front of them, but on top of that, every manager going forward then has to dedicate some of their time to the potential of Tottenham doing their plan B or their plan C. It's inches. As Al Pacino said in Any Given Sunday, football, as in life, is all about inches. 1/2 a yard too soon or too late, you don't quite catch it. 1/2 a second too fast or too slow, you don't quite make it. The inches we need are everywhere around us. I'm not sure you're going to hear a better Al Pacino impression at 8:35, excuse me, on a Saturday night, even though it's just scratched my throat doing it. But guys, he's right? They're everywhere, but you have to look for them. You have to be willing to embrace them, and you have to acknowledge that you're making a rod for your own back and you're giving people the opportunity to bash you for things that are not really your fault. When you say things like, it's who we are, and I'm doubling down, and I don't really care about your thought, your approach. I'm going to roll my eyes when people ask me, what have we done differently, or how are we fixing corners, when you haven't fixed the corners. The only reason we have less set piece issues in terms of goals conceded this year than last year is because the teams that did embrace it last year are not doing it as much. But that doesn't mean that we fixed anything. The goal that we conceded at the back post from that positional, zonal marking that just fell apart the other day was... it was nothing short of embarrassing. It was schoolboy stuff, and it proves the point, I think, that you're not listening or learning, and it's stubbornness to a T, and it's unnecessary. And that's the thing I've always said: unnecessary vulnerabilities are going to be the reason why Ange doesn't work out. If he was to embrace a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of humility, then he would garner so much respect and credibility with the fans who want to love him. I want to love him. I want him to succeed. And for what it's worth, even though I have my concerns, and like I've said 1,000 times, I don't think it will work in the long run, not consistently. I think there's too big of a hill to climb just yet. The players we've invested in haven't been not quite at the level that we probably hoped they were going to be. The injuries that he's had to deal with, which by the way, again, is another variable that is outside of his control, and he has faced an incredibly bad spell of injury luck. Not just the frequency of injuries, but the compounding of the amount of injuries to the same type of player in the same position at the same time, which leaves you with no ability to fix that hole because you just don't have any caliber of player that's good enough that can slot in, that won't be yielded and taken advantage of by the teams that do prepare for the weaknesses of the opposition. And all of that stuff is kind of not his fault as well, right? Like I say, it's not his fault that Daniel Levy pisses most of you off. It's not his fault that the senior citizens had their tickets, their prices slashed. It's not his fault that the beer tastes flat. It's not his fault that Tottenham haven't won more than one trophy in 25 years. It's not his fault for nearly all of the reason why you're pissed off. But that doesn't mean that he isn't guilty of making it easy for people to pick at him because he believes in a message which is clearly problematic in its delivery and will be the ultimate downfall. His ultimate unbecoming finale will be self-sabotage, in my opinion. It doesn't have to be that way. But he, for now, should not be sacked. He should not be sacked. Those of you that are calling for Ange out because of Bournemouth and because of a swing, I get it. I get the frustration. I get that the trend is not your friend in this one. And, top four is out of here. Top four's done. Right, we're not going to qualify for the Champions League unless we win the Europa League. The Europa League. And that's really where I think our ambitions and our interests should move now. Right? Is it Villarreal in Spain, I think, who basically... Is it Villarreal or Valencia? One of those two teams, one of the V teams, that they basically only ever care about the cups and they do really well in them because they know that they're not going to win the La Liga in all likelihood with Real Madrid and Barcelona and whoever else, Girona being sort of so much more sophisticated and resourced and all that stuff. So they focus on the cups and they do very well because that's what they are. They're a cup team and they embrace it. And Tottenham were always a cup team. And this season, we're still in 3 cups. And if Ange can find a way to get the team back playing together, get that gel going, get the Man City version of us out against Manchester United next, and against Tamworth and against Rangers on Thursday, then if Tottenham can stay in all 3 competitions, there's absolutely no reason to sack him. And he could win a cup this year because we are capable on our day of beating anybody on our day. And if we do that, then he would have done what no manager has done since Ramos. And so, I think you have to let him figure it out. You have to give him the rope here, but he has to figure it out. If you're going to let him figure it out, he has to figure it out that there's hills that are worth dying on and there's hills that are, they're not even mounds in terms of significance. You don't need to feel like you're sacrificing your morals or that you're taking one for the team. Like, he doesn't have to see it that way. And as I say, if you haven't got the message across yet, and you think that is more important than being mad about poor performances that are in isolation, that aren't in isolation, they are themed and trending, then I think that you're missing the wood for the trees, Ange. It doesn't need to be this way. It doesn't. And like I say, I acknowledge and appreciate all of the things that are going against you that are outside of your control. But the things that are within your control are unnecessary vulnerabilities. There's very few things that are in your control that are weaknesses that we can't overcome. Our squad is capable. Our squad's absolutely ravaged with injuries, and yet we still have a squad that is better than 80% of other first teams in the league. So it's about how you get them to play. And the only way that I would in any way condone or endorse his removal right now, guys, would be if it's clear and obvious that he's lost the dressing room. If that happens, you're a lame duck manager, and I just don't think there's any point in wasting any more time. But I don't think we're anywhere near that yet. I think that the players just look a little bit like they've lost a little bit of belief in themselves, a little bit of belief in the system, and I think that the communication of the solution when you're struggling needs to come from somewhere. And the absence of it on the pitch is crying out for something to happen from the sideline, from the coaching staff, from the lessons that they could learn about how to take advantage of other teams, from the ability to just throw in a curveball and do something a little bit differently. In that game against Bournemouth, it was a little bit cringy when we were getting absolutely ramrodded in that second half. We were 1-0 down. We used to be the team that would go in 1-0 down, come out and then absolutely bosh teams in the second half. That's not happening anymore. And against Bournemouth, we were just torn apart like a knife through butter. And there was nothing. There was no communication from the players to each other. There was no communication from the staff, from the manager. The coaches weren't even talking to each other. It looked like everybody was just witnessing a car crash that they can't control. And they have got the ability to get out there and implement something in real time. I know it's difficult, but you have to be willing to do it. You have to be willing. And that's where I worry about Ange. I don't know if he's willing to adapt. I don't know if it's a stubbornness. I think there's a little bit of ego, a little bit of an attachment to the personal brand of it's who we are. But like I say, there's nobody else in the Premier League, nobody else in world football that would say it's who we are, we're not going to change. And they don't look at the margins that are so tight and see some value in keeping the opposition guessing, doing some analysis and taking advantage of the unique the unique constraints and the unique nuances of each week's different fixture. And if you're just spending all day, every day, drilling the same stuff at match level intensity on a training ground, I think that it will get old very quickly. And at this stage, at this point, I would argue, Ange, that, you know, the trend that we're seeing is not going to change unless you change something. And so if you don't, I feel like your time is numbered. I personally don't want to see you go. I don't want to see anything other than your success. And I think that you're very, very much capable of delivering a trophy in your second year, like you promised us just a few weeks ago. We are all in all the cups, and I think we have to see that play out. And I think that we have to also be conscious of the things that are really upsetting us when we decide to point fingers and say things to people that are only partially responsible for a very partial point of your overarching frustrations with the football club. And figure it out, bro. Like, subscribe, and comment, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.